Hi, I'm Jen, and I'll be sharing 20 years worth of data secrets.
And I'm Kevin, and from my perspective as a educational specialist and consultant, I'll be helping her to do that. And together we'll
Bring you For the Love of Data. Kevin, COVID's not that long ago, and it's getting there, except that it was such a major event. Is there something that jumps out at you when you think back to the COVID days?
even before we started working on data together, I found COVID was all about data. Uh, and I think people maybe understood data a little better, or maybe they just got overwhelmed by it. But it was all about maps and data and what was happening in the world represented in numbers.
Perfect. And if I remember correctly, I think you also said it was a bit annoying because it was numbers, but it was numbers and only numbers. And if people look back on our little taping on numbers versus rates, it really should have been rates. It shouldn't have been raw numbers. And I'm so happy when I heard you say that was annoying because it's very annoying for me too.
Well,
Uh,
let me do another take where I say that. Okay.
okay.
So 3, 2, 1. And one of the things that actually annoyed me a fair bit was people kept saying to me, "Oh my God, there's so much COVID in this country or this state." And I thought, well, how much COVID is there? They reported a number, sounded like a big number, but I wondered, well, what's the population there? What's the incident? What's the rate of COVID in that place? And it was like, that was too far beyond. If you look in our other podcasts, you'll hear our conversation about rates versus counts, and it will be very useful. But that's not what this podcast is about. What do you remember from COVID, Jen?
Well, I remember two key things. One is personal and one is data related. So the personal one is my dad at 80 something got COVID maybe a week after it was pronounced as such a terrible disease. And we were devastated, but it was COVID with no symptoms or another discussion.
Wow.
Anyhow, so that was relieving. What I remember very specifically in this case about data was an article that someone kindly shared with me. One of the former directors at the city patched me this article. So let's take a look and see if some people had the kind of reaction that I had when I saw it. So, what does it say? It says the CDC director,
Let me read it
okay, you read
because
it.
that just allows us to go.
Yeah.
It says the CDC director, and we know Centers for Disease Control, the overseeing all of epidemiology in the states, Rochelle Walensky, called for her agency to be overhauled after an external review found it had failed to respond quickly and clearly to COVID. She faulted the agency for acting too much like an academic institution that was focused on producing data for publication versus data for action.
And so, you know what, Kevin? I think it. Okay, hold on. Um,
Okay, just pick it up where you. So you were going
so
to maybe do your review, your hook statement there.
did I hear you say that sentence should call for agency to be overhauled? I was watching to hear that word, and I don't think I heard you read it.
Okay, I'll pick it up.
One more time.
Okay. She called for her agency to be overhauled after an external review found it had failed to respond quickly and clearly to COVID. She faulted the agency for acting too much like an academic institution that was focused on producing data for publication and not data for action.
Whoa. Well, when I was reading it, Kevin, I thought, call for agency to be overhauled. Oh my goodness, what did they do? And then it was all about the data people. It was like the data people only produced, well, she says they only produce data for academic type of data for consumption, not for action. And I thought, oh my goodness, this person's going to just kibosh the data team for doing what? And so when I think about that, Kevin, let's take a real deep dive at what is this saying? Okay, well, they're acting like an academic institution focusing on producing data for publication. The data folks respond to requests for data. And so that's pretty much fundamentally only their job. What do you want? And here we deliver it to you. If we do anything else, that's a bonus. And so maybe my take, well, it's not maybe, my take on this is the fault lies with the leadership not asking for what they need. It's not the data folks not providing the right data. Again, we're only providing what's requested generally. However, let's take a deeper dive. 3 quick questions, specifically focusing on where this is headed.
Okay,
Where,
question number one. What? Okay, question number one. Who is the best to determine the data needed? What's the answer, Jen?
well, now there's 3 options, and we're showing you these 3 circles. Option number one is it the data provider who should determine the data needed? Is it the data requester? Or is it other team members focusing on the issue at hand? Drum roll. uh, for folks that have watched a couple of our podcasts, you'll note the Bruce Anderson scenario podcast. My answer is it lies with 2 areas. First and foremost, the data requester, because the data providers are only responding to that. But because the data requester doesn't know the whole field of information the data providers have access to, it's always best to also consult with the data providers and say, whatever else you think might be handy, because they might be asking for totally the wrong information too. And so look back at the Bruce podcasts to glean more on that. My answer is group 1 and group 2, provider and requester. You want to
The
challenge
second,
that, Kevin?
no, no. So I'm certainly not going to challenge you on that. It does make sense. And our other podcasts, as you say, show how a partnership between the two, data provider, data requester, really makes sense so that they're the trusted advisor who knows the data can help the senior person frame their question, frame their request, get at what they want. They want something, and then they end up saying they want some data to support it. That's maybe not the right data. All right. Our next question is: once data is provided, who's the best person to analyze the data? Because I think that that accusation that this woman made was sort of implying that they provided the wrong stuff, they put it in a format that wasn't very useful or didn't help people understand things. So what's the answer to this one? Who's the best to analyze the data?
Again, my answer is it's never one particular area. The more people involved, the better. And I'll tell you from firsthand experience, I had a team of 6. Whenever I had the opportunity, and it was an important enough request for information, sometimes for publication and to the whole Toronto audience in the newspapers or on TV, I would pull the whole team. And let me promise you, generally 1 or 2 of us had ideas no one else had from what they saw in the data. So it's best to pool as many people as possible. And the data requester is not off the hook here. I don't care if you're the president of the organization or where you fall within that leadership cycle asking for data. You need to take a look yourself and see what you see rather than just point and blame. And so take a quick look and pull the thoughts together, and that's the analytics. Normally, the analytics are pointing to next steps required, not always an answer, maybe more data required. Be aware of that too.
Okay, you've segued right to the third question. Who is the best to determine the next steps, the what we need for action, what maybe more who decides that we may need more data so we can take the right action?
And let me tell you what answer it's not. It's not the data providers that determine next steps. I promise you that. So if we circle back to the article that says, they produced academic institution type of data for publication, not for action. Well, the initial request was probably something like, what are the COVID cases like and where are they? Let's say something basic like that. The provider's giving you that and then they stop. But if you think they're too high here and they're astronomical there, and why in that country are they so great? Well, then you need to ask for what you want next. Oh, let's look at what we can traction and do to improve. Maybe we need more data on this before we decide, or maybe we don't even need more data. But that's so not fair to say they're not producing data for action. Data for action is only produced when someone asks for that data. And it could be the data provider's partial could throw something in there, but it's normally someone on the team that is knowledgeable in this field, and probably in this case the nurses, the doctors, etc. So that is my answer, and I feel so much more relieved getting that off my chest. I don't agree with that article at all.
Okay. How would you summarize what you're saying here?
Well, is this our key secrets, Kevin? So I'll share one or two. One of our key secrets here: data needs are determined by the senior leaders plus the data team. It's definitely not only the data team.
I think the little circles that we're showing here, it makes it very clear that there's a multitude of players, and any one player saying, "Well, gee, I did fine, you didn't do so good," is really a silly way of going about it. There's people need the data for have different roles in this. I'm sorry, we're stopping.